This is Jazz London Live, bringing the best of London's vibrant jazz scene to Brooklyn's radio.
That was Burnout by Remy Harris, and I'm pleased to say that I've got him on the line now for an interview. Remy, how are you doing?
Doing good, thanks. And you?
I'm very happy to have you on. Ever since I saw you on a double bill with Martin Taylor up north somewhere, I can't remember where it was, a jazz festival, I think.
Yeah.
But I didn't know you at the time, but I knew obviously Martin, and I was absolutely blown away by your playing. And when I had a slot, you're the first person that I wanted to interview. So thank you for accepting the interview.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe if we could start by, if you could just tell me a bit about how you got into guitar and specifically the sort of the gypsy jazz type style that you're playing.
So I started playing guitar when I was 7 years old, when I got my first guitar, and I had toy guitars going back since I was a little toddler. So guitar has always been part of my life. My dad plays guitar, so I grew up sitting and watching him practice and stuff, and so.
And what style was that? What did he play? What kind of music was he playing then?
Well, Dad was into kind of 60s, 70s music mainly, but he also played in a soul band. So he did, that was more when I was a teenager, but he played kind of, the Blues Brothers Commitments kind of repertoire. But yeah, he listens to, at home, a lot to the Beatles, to Led Zeppelin, Neil Young, Jimi Hendrix, and some earlier like Chuck Berry and stuff like that as well. As far back as I can remember, I've always been surrounded by the sights and sounds of guitar.
How young were you when you actually started playing with a band and playing this type of music?
My first gig was when I was 11. That was actually like an after-school performance with my teachers, and my dad was actually in that band as well. In my early teens, I forget the exact age, but maybe like 13, 14, we had a little band going with some friends, and that's when I started doing gigs out, and we'd play in pubs and, school fetes and birthday parties and stuff like that.
And when did you first think, actually, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a musician?
Oh, good question. I think, to be honest, it goes right back to when I was a kid. It's all I've ever really wanted to do. I used to flick through my dad's kind of guitar magazines and Mojo magazine and stuff like that, and I just wanted to be like the people in the photos there. So I don't know if there was a particular time when I thought this is it. Along the way there were slight periods where I thought maybe I want to be a football player or something like that. But I was quite keen to be an artist for a few years.
But you're going to say astronaut then?
Not astronaut. That'd be a pretty cool job though, wouldn't it? But
I know that you have those influences, the sort of the British 60s blues, Peter Green type influences, and I know you have some projects of that ilk. But when did you sort of flip over into jazz, or when did you get exposed to that, and how did you come to go that direction?
So in my late teens was when I started kind of listening to it more, and I was still playing in blues rock type bands, at the time, but I was gradually getting more and more, my ear was kind of opening up to jazz music in general. I think the reason was because even when I was playing rock and blues stuff, the kind of material that I really liked was the very jammy stuff, the very improvised stuff anyway. So like the bands in the late 60s, early 70s, there was a lot of improvisation and jamming, and on stage particularly, and that was something that I've always liked. And I think the more and more you get into improvising, gradually you find yourself listening to jazz, because jazz is predominantly about improvising. But there wasn't like a light bulb moment, it was just gradually I started to open up to that music.
I feel like I can see those two different influences quite strongly. Obviously the 60s blues, pop, rock thing, and then also the gypsy styling of it, and also obviously the nature of the band that you have, the guitar that you play, all this type of things. But I wonder why you went that route rather than, say, playing an electric guitar in a modern jazz type lineup, for example, double bass, drums, saxophone, and you say.
Yeah. Well, I think there's probably a couple of reasons. I think first off, the gypsy jazz is predominantly guitar-led, so a lot of guitar players find themselves drawn to it anyway, just because it's guitar-based music, as a lot of rock music is. But I think also there's a certain energy with the gypsy jazz stuff, particularly when I was first getting into it, that kind of related to the energy of rock music. Gypsy jazz tends to be quite energetic at times, in the same way something like AC/DC is energetic, So I think the energy you get off gypsy jazz, certainly when I was, 20 years old, attracted me. Even back then, it wasn't straight into purely gypsy jazz, although that was the style of guitar playing I really went into in depth. I was listening to Wes Montgomery and Joe Pass, and it was jazz in general, but gypsy jazz was the kind of big portion of that, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And
did you have any mentoring from any particular figures? Was anyone who took you under their wing, or people that helped you in that way?
Well, I was working in a guitar shop in my teens. I was a Saturday boy there through school, and then after school I went to 3 days a week. And my boss at the shop, the owner of the shop, Trevor Davis, he played jazz guitar. And I don't think I'd be playing jazz guitar now if it wasn't for him, because when the shop was empty, it wasn't kind of formal lessons, but when the shop was empty, I'd make him a coffee and we'd sit down and he'd show me something, a chord change or a 2-5-1 or it'll explain how maybe a chord is related to a scale or something like that. And so that was really important, and it was so useful to learn that. And I was actually learning that before I was playing jazz, really. I was picking up these tips off Trev. And then I think when I decided, right, I'm going to really try and learn jazz guitar, I had some of that basic understanding from Trev, yeah.
I've read quite a few complimentary quotes about you from some great jazz artists. Jamie Cullum says nice things about you. John Etheridge, Martin Taylor. That must be nice to have some well-established fans of that ilk. What's your relationship to any of those guys?
Yeah, well, it's an honour that for me that guys like that think nice things about my playing. I've known John Etheridge for many years. I played on a gig with him maybe 10 years or so ago now, and then every now and again we end up on the same gig or the same festival. Yeah, John's a great guy, and Martin as well. We played that festival with him. That was the first time I met Martin, and he's been very supportive as well. And likewise, Jamie found us through the BBC introducing scheme, where you upload your tracks and they get submitted, and I uploaded my tracks to my local BBC Introducing website, which is Hereford and Worcester, and Jamie listened to us, and since then he's really been very supportive, and it's been amazing. Yeah, very thankful for it.
So I think the time's come to cue up another track. This is Remy's version of Lady Madonna, Lennon and McCartney original, which I think showcases a little bit of what we've been discussing, like the blend of the gypsy jazz and the 60s rock pop influences. So here is Remy's version of Lady Madonna. Beautiful track, Lady Madonna by Remy Harris, who I've got in the studio with me here. Remy, that track was from your album Ninic, but you're currently touring your album On Track. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, On Track so that album was actually started before the pandemic, and then we were kind of nearing completion, and then the pandemic hit. and the studio we were using went into furlough, and everything just got dragged on and on and on. And I ended up doing some of the recording for it to finish it off at home here on my home setup, which is not quite as good as the studio we were working with, but we managed to make it work. And then managed through the different opening up of lockdown periods, we managed to finish the mixing and get everything done. So it was actually released at the beginning of this year officially, but it's an ongoing project.
And who are your collaborators on that?
I was playing with two double bass players, Tom Moore, who I play a lot with in duo, and Simon Smith also played bass on a couple of tracks on that, another good friend of ours. And the rest, all the guitars I did, so I kind of overdubbed the rhythm guitars after the lead had been recorded.
You do it after the lead? Interesting.
Yes, I do it that way round because I like the rhythm guitar to be able to respond dynamically to the lead. So if I say record a lead part to just a click, a 2/4 metronome or something, or something similar, and then I'll go in and I'll play the rhythm to my lead, and that way I can. So it's less of a kind of lead over a backing track. It's more kind of the rhythm is part of the solo. Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, and you mentioned your other project, which is the British '60s side of your musical personality, which is the music of Peter Green.
Yes, we do a project which is a new project for us. It's called Man of the World, the music of Peter Green, and that's where we're playing all Peter Green material from his time in John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, and then obviously Fleetwood Mac, and we're going to look at some of the stuff he's done after Fleetwood Mac as well.
Right.
So that should be fun. Yeah, looking forward to that.
I noticed that you have your own educational book out entitled 100 Gypsy Jazz Licks.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Yeah, that was another lockdown project actually. The publishers, Fundamental Changes, were really good guys. I'd spoke to them in the past about doing a book, but at the time I was so busy with gigs I couldn't kind of commit to anything. But during the lockdowns, because there were fewer gigs going on, I managed to get one finished. So that was good. Yeah, it was a good experience.
I see that you have your own club and arts organisation called the Yardbird. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, Yardbird Arts is. It was originally set up as our label just to release my albums, but we also run gigs and put on events and things under that kind of umbrella. We have a monthly jazz gig in a little venue here where I live, and we also put gigs on in local halls and stuff like that. So it's kind of an umbrella term, yeah. And
whereabouts are you based?
Worcestershire.
I had a look at your gig listings on your website, and you're obviously a very hard-working musician who's travelling around the country playing to all sorts of audiences, but there's not so many gigs listed in London. When's the next time we're going to see you there?
That's a good question. I think we're actually playing in January or February next year. We'll be coming with our new Peter Green project, which is obviously not jazz, but blues stuff. But yeah, we're planning to come to London a few times. It's next year. It's quite a drive from here, so we don't get down there as much as perhaps we'd like. But yeah.
So I just wanted to run a few artists past you and get your thoughts on them. There's a few people that I hear similarities in maybe the sound worlds or maybe some of the influences, or I just wanted to get your take on some of these guys that are making waves like yourself in the jazz world or the alternative world. So Julian Lage.
Oh yeah, he's amazing. I think he's one of my favourite guitar players at the moment.
Interesting.
Certainly currently out on the scene. He's playing currently. Yeah, he's mind blowing. Yeah.
And then I guess going more of the blues, going down the blues rock side, Eric Gales.
Yes, yeah, I know Eric Gales. He's really amazing.
Yeah. Have you had the chance to see him live?
I've never seen him live, but I've seen lots of videos. Yeah, he's a real amazing player.
I guess we're getting a bit far away from jazz here. Let's cleave back to the jazz world. I don't know how much you're into the sort of the modern, I guess you'd say, NYC guitarists, Gilad Hexelman, Kurt Rosenwinkel, Adam Rogers, of the kind of new guard. I don't know how much are you into that style much? I guess it's quite different to the gypsy jazz, but I just wondered what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to all those guys, yeah, and I like it. I mean, obviously it's a different way of playing to what I'm kind of going for, I guess. But yeah, they're amazing players. Mad respect for those guys. And Adam Rogers actually did a really great album. I think it's called Dice, where it's kind of almost a fusion type album, which I listen to quite a bit. Yeah, but they're amazing players. Yeah, I mean, I've watched them all and listened to them on YouTube and stuff, and so I've got mad respect for those guys. Yeah.
Just going back to the gypsy side of things, I thought you're such a phenomenal, so phenomenal in that particular genre style. I feel like there must be some backstory of you going to live in Paris or Transylvania for 7 years. But how did you get such mastery of that style? Well,
I mean, it's basically just practicing at home majority of the time, you know. But I did go to the Samoa Festival for probably about 3 or 4 years, which is the Django Reinhardt Festival. It's about an hour south of Paris, and you go there for a week and you meet and jam with lots of different people. So definitely that was a good experience. But I think majority of my kind of learning in this genre has just been at home, listening to the players that I like, transcribing it, watching videos on YouTube, and then just going out and gigging. And as you mentioned, I do a lot of gigs, and that I've learned a lot just on the job, you know. And it's a work in progress, but it's kind of.
I think it's interesting you say that, because I think that is definitely the changing face of. I mean, not just jazz, but all musicians. I think now with the sort of, I don't want to call you the YouTube generation, but of people who can actually get a lot sat in your bedroom. You can actually see things that you couldn't see back in the day, where you would have to have gone somewhere and learnt it from someone. Whereas now you can really get it sat at home. And I think there's so many people that I've come across, young musicians who that's the case, and are really, really credible musicians. And I think also what you said is so true, like the playing live thing. The amount of people that I think aren't any good, and then a year later they've been gigging solidly for a year and they're amazing. Like, that was quick.
Yeah, playing with people and playing live is so important. I mean, you can do lots of shedding at home, but you've got to go out there and put it into practice and be in front of an audience. Yeah,
well, it's like the old army thing of no plan survives contact with the enemy. So you can practice as much as you want at home, and then as soon as you're on the stage, suddenly you And so this album's now out. Presumably you've been touring it all this year. What are your plans for the future? Do you have a new album in the pipeline, or what do you have coming up?
My next album will be an electric album, because the first 3 albums I did were all gypsy jazz, and the next one will be an electric rock and blues album, playing material that goes back right to when I was a teenager, you know. So and then once I've done that, I'll do another jazz album, I think. So that's my next 2 projects.
And that album, is that with the Peter Green based band, or is it originals? What exactly is that?
It'll be original material. It'll be my original material, but it'll be the same guys that play with the Peter Green project.
Okay.
But it'll probably it's most likely to be all instrumental, because majority of the songs are instrumental tunes of mine, whereas with the Peter Green thing we have a vocalist with us. So yeah. Okay,
so I think that brings us to the end of the interview, and we've got time for one more track, which is going to be Django's Tiger. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is a classic Django Reinhardt tune, and it's an interesting one because actually if you listen to the original Django recording, the opening melody, which you'll hear at the beginning of the song, he plays that at the start of the recording, but he doesn't return to it. So we don't know if he just improvised it on the spot and it just became, people learnt it and it became, I'm not sure anybody really knows for sure if he composed it or whether he just improvised it. But it's one of those ones that we all love to play. And it's actually based on the chord sequence to a tune called Tiger Rag, which is a very old jazz song that Django used to play.
Well, before we play the track, I'd just like to say a big thank you for coming on the show. It's been great talking to you.
You too, man. Take care.
Well, here it is, Django's Tiger by Remy Harris.